Do we have a couple of seconds before we go live?
Yes.
I'm going to plug in a cord. I'm getting a low battery thing, and the last thing I want is this to die. So let me just plug this in, and we'll be
great.
good.
Yes. You're looking at live footage from Minneapolis. That's a memorial for George Floyd, a black man killed by a former police officer almost a year ago. Welcome to Now This News. I'm Zinhle Essamuah. Our live coverage of the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial. The ex-officer has been found guilty by a jury of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter in the killing of George Floyd. As the judge read the verdict, Chauvin was looking forward, almost emotionless and stoic. Meanwhile, there was lots of cheering outside the courtroom. And tonight, I am joined by Ben Jealous, former president of the NAACP, to talk about all that we've seen tonight, but also the last 12 months. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Wow, what a moment.
What a moment.
I think we've been holding our breath, quite frankly, since George Zimmerman was acquitted. That's the last time there was a case, I think, that captured such international attention was Trayvon Martin.
Absolutely.
And we knew that never doubt the power of good prosecutors, of prayer, of activists. All of them played a role in getting us to this place where we hear guilty, guilty, guilty. And of course, common sense had assured all of us that that's what should happen. And yet our nation's history of allowing black people to be killed with impunity by the police had us all fearing something else might happen. So this is a great moment that reminds us our nation can evolve, and we can bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice.
And you referenced the many black people who have been fatally killed by officers. You referenced Trayvon Martin, who wasn't killed by an officer, but George Zimmerman. And I just wonder, are you surprised by this moment, given what you have painted for us, which is that this does not happen often, that an officer is found guilty?
No, it's, for 30 years, all of America has had to watch what Black America has never been allowed to forget in 400 years, which is that officers of the law, and even those sort of like pretending to be in the way that George Zimmerman did, can get away with killing black folks with impunity. I believe that that's had an effect. Racism isn't new, but it being captured on video has only been with us for about a generation and a half in this way. And those 30 years, I believe, have kind of built towards this moment.
And
it's a moment of great relief.
Yes, and I know with the jury, it only took about 12 hours to reach this decision. So what does that say to you about this case specifically?
Well, I'd say it took about 12 hours and 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The reality is that this case, the video is so damning that it's really hard, even with the inertia of American history on the side of the defense attorneys. Even with all the power of the police union in Minneapolis, that the AFL-CIO of Minnesota has referred to as a white supremacist organization. Think about that for a second. When the union movement of the state refers to the Fraternal Order of Police in the main city in the state as a white supremacist organization, it suggests, quite frankly, that they've gotten away with a lot for a long time. And so, that I think what it really speaks to is that there has been a shift in consensus. And I would say that the video was the most important factor. It was just too hard to argue that people didn't see what they saw. You can't unsee 8 minutes and 46 seconds of a man being murdered.
And you referenced video. There was so much video played during this trial. And something unusual was that what many call the blue wall of silence came tumbling down. We saw lots of police officers testify against Derek Chauvin, the former officer, saying this was not protocol, this was not standard. Do you think this is going to have a bigger effect on future trials when it comes to officers and, unfortunately, the recurrence of Black people being killed in the field?
This is going to have a huge impact on the nature of public safety and policing in our country. Cracking that blue wall of silence is critical. What criminologists will tell you is that in any given department, you can anticipate that roughly 10% of the officers are corrupt, overly violent, a problem in some serious way. And 10 to 15% of the officers have the courage to confront them. But in the middle, there is roughly 70%, 3/4 of officers who simply stay silent and therefore enable the 10% who are truly bad. And that is the problem. That is the problem inside the department. There's also another problem, which is that our departments themselves are based on old theories of justice that go back to the British military, during, before we were a country even, and to slavery throughout the history of our country and the colonies that preceded it. In many communities like my own, the first organized patrols were slave patrols. And so there's a need for a clean break at the 21st century, where we really reimagine what public safety means for us now, and we build departments. And the most interesting thing that happened during the trial was on day 3. The city of Ithaca, New York, its young mayor, Savanti Myrick, leading them, voted to replace their police department with a civilian-led public safety department, and over time replace half of the officers with uniformed, unarmed social workers, because half the work is social work. That's the type of transformation that I think we will see more of as people say, wait a second, we just can't keep doing what we've been doing and expect different results.
Right. I know that after the death of George Floyd, there was a lot of talk about community policing. And something else we saw during this trial was a lot of attention on the jurors, specifically the racial makeup of them, right? 6 of them were white, 4 Black, 2 identified as multiracial, 5 were men, and 7 women. What role do you think the diversity of the jury played, if any?
Oh, it's critical. It's critical. So often throughout our country's history, you've seen Black people denied justice by all white juries. Our Constitution guarantees us to a trial by our peers, a jury of our peers. And for white people, that's something that they can take for granted. For Black people, it has eluded us too many times. And if you spent much time in Minneapolis, and I have both on past police brutality trials and also, frankly, fighting for marriage equality and a whole range of issues, it's a very diverse town. That jury reflects that town that is a jury of peers. And when we actually get that, justice is more likely for sure.
And I wanted to ask you about that. Justice. Do you believe justice has been served?
I do believe justice has been served. I also believe that the federal government needs to weigh in and do their part and actually seek civil rights charges. We have 3 big lanes for dealing with justice in these cases. We have now completed 2 of them. The first was the civil lane, and the city settled, and in doing so, recognized that it was likely that Chauvin was guilty. Now we've had a trial which has said beyond a shadow of a doubt he is not just guilty of one of the charges, he's guilty of all of the charges. And the federal government needs to go further, and quite frankly, that police department needs to be broken down and rebuilt. When the labor movement of your state refers to the police union in your city as a white supremacist organization, it means that your police department is deeply troubled and needs to be rebuilt, reimagined, maybe even like Ithaca, put under civilian control. And the federal government not letting up, not saying the state's sort of done justice, but actually saying there are larger civil rights questions that need to be answered here, is an important part of that process.
And I think this has been going on for an entire year, and I think this entire really horrendous event, which was that George Floyd lost his life. He died, has forced everyone to reimagine the systems we have, whether it's policing or how we value life. And so I wonder what your message is to activists who, many of whom are out in the streets right now. Some were cheering and celebrating. I know even recently they came out because of the death of Dwayne Wright, who died in Minneapolis while this trial was taking place. So what is your message to the activists, and what's next as we look ahead? What needs to happen?
My message to activists, to organizers, to those in the streets is your activism matters. Your organizing matters. Stay outraged. Stay engaged. Do not take your foot off the gas. We have to go much further. Getting justice for George Floyd was simply the bare minimum. To ensure that he did not die in vain, each of us has to make sure that we build a public safety system that allows his daughter to grow up with confidence that her life will be protected in a way that her father's was not. You can go back to the martyring of Emmett Till and the insistence of his mother that the nation take stock of what had been done to her son. And that act of bravery spurred our nation to tear down the walls of segregation for all of its sons and daughters. It emboldened us to be more courageous, and so it must be in this moment. George Floyd's martyring by Derek Chauvin must embolden all of us to build a stronger, better nation in which all of our nation's children can grow up in confidence that they will be respected and protected by the very police who have promised to do just that.
Well, Ben Jealous, former NAACP president, thank you for your time and your insights on this very historic night here in the U.S.
Thank you. God bless.
Yes, and thank you to everyone for watching. To recap, we have been following the immediate aftermath and reactions of the trial of Derek Chauvin. He was found guilty of by a jury of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter in the killing of a black man, George Floyd, about a year ago. This has been 3 weeks of testimony and something the entire country has been watching incredibly closely. So definitely an emotional moment for many. And so we want to thank you for being with us as we analyze all that's been happening. And we hope you'll continue to follow all of our coverage of this and much more. Stay safe and stay well. This has been Zinhle Essamuah with Now This.